to their wealth. If we allow the current political and economic structures to subsist, it is predictable that 100 years from now, our children and grandchildren will live in an undeveloped Nigeria. It's not a curse, it's predictable. If we want to prosper and see Nigeria develop, we must ensure some deep changes in our economic and political institutions. I will start with the economy and then come to the politics. For the potential of the average Nigerian to create wealth to be unleashed, we need to be given property rights more easily. The Land Use Act must be removed from our Constitution and must be thoroughly reviewed. To buy a landed property and to wait for years for governor's consent or the certificate of occupancy is a formula for mass poverty. Without a change of names at the land registry, the potential cash value of your property cannot be realized. We need to get government out of our way. And yet there is potential for government itself to earn a lot of revenue through taxes if we increase the speed of transactions in landed property. In some of the parts of the world, just 2 to 4 weeks, you get your documents from the land registry that the land has been changed to your name. And you can leverage that to do other things. Next to the right to own landed property is the right to own ideas. We must compel our political and economic institutions to make credit available to us to actualize our ideas. As we actualize our dreams and store our funds in the banks, we need the banks to get into competition to serve us. And I believe that ultimately that will help drive down the interest rates. We must compel the legislative and executive arms of government to rapidly increase the ease of doing business in our country. And then I believe that we must follow our money. No one should be allowed to go into government to get rich. We must all pay attention to the budgets and ask for regular reports on how the budgets are being executed. If you serve us well and you create the platform for people to generate ideas and to actualize their ideas and to prosper, you don't need to steal money while in government. If you serve well, you will be able to leverage on goodwill to prosper after you leave office. Any government at any level that does not expend most of the budget to build world-class infrastructure to make it easy for us citizens to prosper from now should be voted out. We need to change our political institutions and then our economic institutions. Our political institutions include the executive, legislature, electoral commission, and the political parties at all levels. Our history of slavery and colonization has shaped our political institutions. After the end of the slave trade, slavery continued in Africa. In the 19th century, it is believed that over half the population in West Africa were slaves. Records from French colonized states across West Africa show that as at 1900, 30% of the citizens were slaves. So we made a lot of progress with the granting of independence by colonial masters. But elite Nigerians just simply replaced the colonial masters. We should not be enslaved and colonized in a democratic country. The time for change is now. While we empower government to enforce the law, we must reduce the powers of political office holders. We must make their offices unattractive for getting rich, and we must compel them to empower us to prosper. Any political office holder at the federal, state, or local government levels who will not openly and diligently work towards the economic changes that I listed above should be voted out at the next elections. Any politician who does not promise the changes, those changes should not be allowed to get into office in the first place. These are the issues we need to discuss when it's time for the elections. Any party, political party that does not promote democracy, that is internal democracy, allowing anyone and everyone to contest their primaries, should be punished at the elections. Let us join the political parties en masse now for the sake of our future and that of our children and grandchildren. Change must begin within the parties. And if it is possible, when you get in there, contest for the primaries. Dear Nigerian, the media has been democratized. It's time for you to speak out. You have your Twitter handle, like we heard earlier on from Pastor Kojo. You have Facebook, you have Instagram. What are you going to do with those platforms? Today you can build your own platform and say what you have to say. I know that leaders are not used to being accountable in our part of the world. I come from a part of Nigeria where we use one word to describe our traditional leaders. We call them rulers, but I like to call them leaders. They play such a significant role in the way we run our country. And we need to discuss about their roles actually, but that subject is for another day. But there's a word that we use in the Yoruba language. Kabiyesi, implying that you cannot be queried. You are not accountable to anyone. That describes our culture of leadership. But we cannot build democracy on that foundation. So I know that leaders are not used to being accountable in our part of the world, but they have to be now. You may need to set up a platform to champion one or more of the changes that we espouse now. Finally, I appreciate that we cannot prosper collectively without a change in our collective values. Because ultimately, we have to bring this down to the level of the individual. There is a need for change in our values. The likelihood is that each of us, or most of us, will behave exactly like those who are in control of our political and economic institutions right now if we had the opportunity to control those institutions. I want to challenge you, as I challenge myself, to practice accountable leadership where we are, to practice accountable leadership in our families, to practice accountable leadership in our churches, in our religious institutions, in our businesses, right where you are as the head of a department in your office. Don't make yourself more powerful than the institution you are helping to build. Submit to the principles, the laws, and the policies of that institution. Focus on service, because service is the essence of leadership. Focus on meeting needs. Focus on adding value to people's lives. There are people in our political and economic institutions already who desire to see the changes we talk about, in fact, to enact them. But what you and I know is the fact that they are in the minority. They are in the minority, and when they try to effect any changes, the system has a way of punishing them or impoverishing them. But as you and I rise as citizens to demand these changes, I believe that they will be empowered to also speak out and to do the little bit that they can do in whatever offices they hold. I should say that I see a developed Nigeria. Some people ask, do you think such changes as you espouse are possible? I say yes. Why? It's been done elsewhere in the world before. It happened in Europe, and the countries where the changes happened are the ones that laid the foundation for and participated in the Industrial Revolution. We're not crazy in our part of the world. Whatever our situation is, it's been so in other parts of the world. But some people were courageous enough first to dream that it was possible for their countries to develop. And they did whatever they needed to do to ensure development. So in Europe, yes, there was underdevelopment. And the monarchical system of leadership was there, entrenched. And the elite class